Today on Meet the Coach, we've got Ryan Larsen. He's the quarterbacks coach from Columbia. Has a phenomenal clinic talk on our coaching network. Go ahead and watch that. But we wanted to bring you on Meet the Coach to talk to you a little bit more about perspective and how you got here. So talk to us first about how you got from where you were to where you are now, starting your coaching career to now at Columbia.
Yeah, a lot of stops, a lot of things. I knew going into college I wanted to be a coach. I knew that. I thought that I wanted to be a high school coach. I got to college, realized that to be a high school coach, believe me, there's nothing wrong with being a high school coach, but I'd have to teach. I'd have to do something to really make my salary, and then I would get some money to coach. And I realized in college, I was like, wow, I could just do this. So that kind of like shifted my gears, mentally to more of the college game. There's not a lot of, college coaching degrees out there. So I spent my summers of college working camps. I found ways to work camps and get involved. And I always kind of posed myself to these camp owners and directors just saying, hey, like, I'm a college quarterback. I want to coach. I just want to help.
And where'd you play? Where'd you play in college?
I played at Claremont McKenna, which is a small D3 school outside of Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the camps I did were on the West Coast. I was from the Midwest, so I would go back to the Midwest and see my family, and maybe do a few camps, and that would help, pay for the flight back home and all that. So that's kind of how I started to get to know people. And then when I was about to graduate, a guy who had recruited me, Bill Lynch, who at the time was the head coach at Indiana University, we had kind of maintained a relationship of sorts. And so he was recruiting me when he was the head coach at a D3 school at DePauw in Indiana. And like, that's the perfect example, guys. Is like, you just never know where like coaches are going to go in recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had a great relationship with Bill, and I was a Division III football player. Like that's what I was. I wasn't a Division I guy, but my relationship with him, fast forward 4 years later, helps get me a job in the Big Ten. So it was, you never know like where all of us end up and who we know. And it was a cool example of how recruiting kind of helped me. So really, Bill just told me, hey, get into grad school, and we'll find a way to get you involved with the program. So my first year as an intern, I didn't make any money. They found small jobs for me, check meals, check classes, maybe make $75 a week on those jobs. But was working on my master's, was at the Big Ten level, got to work with some really, really, really awesome coaches. We had a pretty loaded staff on the offensive side of the ball that I got to be with. Matt Canada, who now is the offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Dennis Springer was our running backs coach and associate head coach. He's been at Northwestern.
He was a coach of mine at Bowling Green.
Yeah, it's a small world, man. So Dennis has been at Northwestern ever since. We all kind of disbanded at Indiana. Kyle Connor was our tight ends coach. He's the OC at Butler. And so there was just guys that kind of just shot off from that, but worked there for a year for free, got promoted to a quality control job my second year. And then like a lot of things in Division I football, unfortunately Bill got let go and the full-time staff got let go. So I worked for the new head coach for a little bit, and then found my first D3 job, my first position job, where I had my own room at Wabash, which is D3 in Indiana. Had 27 wide receivers in my room for my first job, which was was a crash course.
Yeah.
But it was awesome. We went 12-1, finished 6th in the country.
For those who don't know, Wabash is one of the best D3s in the country every year. Always good.
Every year. Phenomenal program, phenomenal school, phenomenal place.
When were you there?
I was there the 2011 season.
Okay. I coached at Oberlin in 2007.
Okay, so I just missed you.
Yeah, and we actually competed. We were terrible. We weren't any good, but we had the best season in like 15 years, and we were 5-5 at Oberlin. But we competed with Wabash, which was a big deal. Ended up losing by like 2 touchdowns or something, but it was close through 3.
Yeah, it's a competitive league. I mean, even for the higher ups in that league, like the Wittenberg, Wabash, the ones that kind of always are at the top, you can't screw around. Like any team in that league could surprise. I mean, I remember that year we went all the way to Allegheny And Allegheny that year was not very good, but it was snowing and it was cold, and we had a 8.5 hour trip, and it was a slug match. I mean, I think we only ended up winning by like less than a touchdown.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was a great game, but it was a good wake up for our kids,
Yeah.
because it was like, hey, like, we're really good, but if we don't do our due diligence, we can slip up. So we ran into the Mount Union Buzzsaw in the Elite Eight, and we played them close. We actually ended up losing by 8 points to them. But there's no solace in losses. There's no moral victories or moral defeats. So I moved on to there. Went to from Wabash to Rhodes College, which is a D3 school in Memphis, Tennessee. It was my first full-time job, in the sense that I was the pass game coordinator. I was a receivers, tight ends coach. Wabash, I was like an intern, so I wasn't getting full-time money. So it was a financial good move for me. Plus I got to start to coordinate, which at that point I was 24. So I was putting together a pass game. Did that for 2 years, got promoted to offensive coordinator my third year, which was awesome. So now I'm, fortunate. I'm like 26 and I'm getting a call on offense, which was awesome. And I learned a lot, good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I got a really unique opportunity to move to the East Coast, to work for Stevenson University. And that was a unique place because the football program had only existed for 4 years. So it was a young, new program. The school had dumped a ton of money into it, not just to get it off the ground, but to win championships. And so it was awesome. Got to go there. We had a ton of success as a team. 4 postseasons in a row, won a conference championship, went to the NCAA tournament, had some great individual players that, set a lot of records and made me look like a good coach. And then, kind of came the call to Columbia 2 years ago, this time 2 years ago, basically. And so now I'm here at Columbia, and it was always a huge goal of mine to get to the Ivy, in terms of coaching. And so I get to work with our quarterbacks, which is a special group of guys, especially at a special, school like this where you're attracting the best of the best academically and athletically. So there's a lot of little pieces in between there, but that was the general, the gist of the journey.
Sure. It doesn't suck to be at a place like Columbia where and have a position at quarterback where you got a bunch of smart ass dudes you can coach and teach things with. But all right. So what a lot of coaches, just in general, usually they look back at their career and they say, man, I wish I knew this. What people in general, I guess, they look back at their career and they say, man, I wish I knew this when I started. What would be that thing for you? What would you tell 22-year-old Ryan Larsen when he was just getting in the coaching game?
Yeah. There's 2 things. One, I lived, and I really think it helped me, is I was really willing to do whatever job. Like, I made the coffee. I stuffed envelopes for recruiting at home at nighttime. And I was an intern. So like I was the lowest of the low, like in terms of the pecking order. So like I was just willing to do anything. Like, and that helped me because all of a sudden people in the office were saying to each other that I was doing those things. I mean, I took it off of Barbara to not have to come in at 6 a.m. to make the coffee. And first off, she shouldn't have done that anyways, but I did it. And my point with it was that, like, I firmly believe I was promoted because there was no one there that would say anything badly about me. And so I think that, and I didn't do it. I just did it because someone had to do the work. Someone's got to do it. It's got to get done. Sure. So embrace that. So that was, one thing that I think helped me. But if I would have done something differently, I think I would have spent a lot more time learning about other positions that I wasn't working with, or the other side of the ball. Have
you always been on offense then?
Always been on offense. And I've really only worked with quarterbacks, tight ends, receivers my whole time. And so, I mean, there were some guys on that Indiana staff that, like, Bobby Johnson is the offensive line coach for the Buffalo Bills. And he was our O-line coach the first year I was there. And then he left and went to the NFL. And, like, sometimes I think, like, man, like, I missed a freaking opportunity. Like I remember seeing his tip sheets and like hearing him in the meetings and all these things. I'm like, God, this guy's so good. I should have taken more advantage. I should have sat in his meetings more with the O-line. I should have found ways to kind of soak up from him. You know, and that's just one guy, one example. I could have done that on the opposite side of the ball.
Yeah.
And learn more. So that's a big thing I think as a young coach is just soak everything up, like find a way. And it's amazing when you're willing to do that, how people want to help you, you know, and want to give you advice. And, you know, yet again, like those things leave impressions on people, and you never know a couple years down the road, that D coordinator who you never really worked with, but you were sitting on his meetings, all of a sudden he gets a head coaching job and he needs to hire offensive guys too. So I wish I would have done more of that. I did a little bit, but not enough.
That happened, I'll tell you after this, but that happened to a buddy of mine, exact same thing. Never worked with the guy, had a decent amount of conversation. I mean, never worked directly with the guy. My guy was on offense, head coach was on, or not, a new head coach was on defense. They would talk and they were friendly or whatever. And they'd go back a little bit and back and forth about scheme and stuff, but it was mostly just like BS talk when they were talking. A guy on the other side of the ball gets a head job, gets him on, they get on a Zoom, they start talking ball, he ends up hiring them shortly thereafter. So same type of thing. Knew the guy, but didn't know the guy well, but was able to connect enough to do that. So moving on, next question for you, as far as like a philosophy that makes you different as a coach, what does make you different? I know, and this could be anything really. I know you've not been a head coach, but you've coordinated, but what do you think your philosophy around coaching or offense or football or working, teaching, whatever that may be, what makes you different as a coach?
I think that the one thing is that I've been able to work at a lot of different types of schools and different types of institutions, and therefore different types of kids. And I've realized that teaching is very different per the individual. And so I've really, you know, I try to go into the mindset that if I only teach one way in a room, it's only going to maybe reach a very small part of the audience. And so I'm really big, and I learned this as a young coach, like I have a 7-step process. Every play we install, every, new play we maybe put in a week, like we're going to go through it 7 ways to learn it. And I get it that the really gifted guy might pick it up on step 1, which is, you know, seeing it on a playbook sheet or drawing it on the board. You know, some guys can see that and they just get it. Some guys need to see video examples of it. Some guys need to walk through it. Some guys need to do it then in individual, then in team, then review it on film after. And so I've always been really, really diligent. Like it sits in my office, like right next to my computer screen. It's the 7-step process. Like I literally stare at it every single day. I never let it go. And I think that that's something that's helped me a lot because, you know, quarterbacks, you know, tend to be pretty cerebral, but to assume that everyone learns the same way, you'd be lying. And so I think it goes back to Wabash and that first room of 27 dudes, where I had to figure it out. I had to figure out how to teach a whole group, but also address each individual. And so I think that's probably the thing that I maybe do uniquely. It's just my approach to teaching. And then to be honest, in the last, year, a lot of people have made a lot of excuses about, what we're in. I've gotten so much better with technology. I've gotten so much better with Zoom. I've had tons of guests come on to our quarterback meetings, and it's amazing the people like former NFL quarterbacks that will come on and talk to our guys about quarterbacking because of this world. And so that's added a new component to teaching as well, is bringing in more outside, resources. And if our guys pick up just one nugget from an hour talk, they're better.
Worth it, right? Yeah. I love that. All right, last question. This is one of my favorite questions to ask. If there's one coach that you've never worked, or give me one coach that you've never worked with that you'd like to work with in the future. Could be a guy you hire, a guy who hires you, depending on the level.
Never worked with. I've been fortunate to be in the same room and around Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern, and he is pretty phenomenal coach, and obviously his wins and losses, but just the culture that he builds within his program it's unbelievable. I mean, it's the way that their kids practice, the way that they compete, the way that they treat each other while competing. It's really awesome. So if I had to pick someone at the college level, it's for sure him. And I've been around him at camps. I've also just been there to watch spring ball. We were there right before the pandemic hit as an offensive staff, and just being around him. And then obviously having a relationship with Dennis, the receivers coach there. I'm able to, pick up nuggets. And at the professional level, I think everyone would always want to say, oh, I want to work for Belichick and,
Sure.
the big names like Andy Reid. But, one guy that I really admire a lot is John Harbaugh with the Ravens. He's a unique coach. He's a little bit different than, the offensive, masterminds and stuff. He brings that special teams kind of background. And yet again, I've been able to go over and watch them practice, and I haven't been in meetings as much there, but I've been able to kind of be around. And he's a guy that I really admire the way he connects with his players, and the professional level is different, and connecting with players is a little bit more, I don't want to say it's tricky, but it's just a little bit different than the college game.
Yeah.
And I really admire the way that he's able to kind of manage personnel while still being a coach and pushing them to get better. So I cheated. I picked two people.
Whatever. You really kind of picked. You threw in Dennis Springer there too, so it's kind of 2.5.
Yeah.
But two great coaches. Love it. Awesome. Thank you, Coach.
Absolutely. Thank you.